Episode 79 of the Interpretation Station is Call to Order. My mother-in-law is going to kill me. I've smashed her cheese board. Oops. How's everyone doing? Welcome, everybody. Yes, new episode of the Interpretation Station today. I thought I'd take it easy today. I've been doing a lot of collabs lately, as you may have noticed if you've been following. They take quite a lot of organization, you see. It can be quite, there's quite a bit of stress goes into organizing good time and everything. So I thought that today I fancy just getting back to basics, as John Major's campaign slogan ran in, 1992? Getting back to basics. Or was it, 92. And so I thought I'd just get back and do a quick wham, bam, thank you, Roland episode for all of you. And the text that we're going to be doing, it was one that was delivered by Cameroon. It was from March of this year at the Human Rights Council. It was an interactive dialogue with the Special Representative of the Secretary General, the SRSG, on children and armed conflict. Now, what I'm going to do, as usual, I'm going to take you through I posted this text, in fact, up on the LinkedIn group a few months back. It was annotated with all the notes. So I'm going to take you through those notes, as usual, just explain to you why I highlighted what I did, why I give you what solutions that I did. And then at the end, I'm going to do a quick run through of it, like just a sort of quick site translation, as if I was interpreting in the booth. So if you want, you can skip me going into the detail. You can just go to the end and see how I would do this text. But I'd advise you to just bear with me. Hopefully I might teach you a thing or two, as long as it's nothing to do with gaveling cheese boards anyway. So, yes, without any further ado, let's get to the text. As I say, it's by Cameroon, and Cameroon's coming up with a lot of interesting texts this year, because they're actually they are the presidents of the chairs of the African group. So, they deliver these statements on behalf of everyone. They'll often provide, you'll see here, the English statement as well. They'll often provide it in French and English. Now, I'm not sure to what extent that's political, by the way. If you don't perhaps work with the African countries that much, you might not know that. So in Cameroon, there's something of a constitutional crisis. There's a bit of internal strife. So Cameroon is actually, you may not again know this, it's a federation. It's made up of a French part and a British part, or sort of that was inherited from the colonial period, and they have two different legal systems. So that, I don't know, I guess it's a run to an extent a bit like the UK, where you have slightly, it's not a unified system, it's parallel systems, and there's a certain amount of tension between the two entities. Now, I'm not going to get into all those details now, but it's worth you looking up. If, as I say, you find that you've got some, you're going to be doing a lot of meetings to do with Africa, it's always good to know some of these things. Just look up a little bit of the background to that. I wouldn't say it's a conflict just yet, but to those tensions. In fact, I'll put in a link in the description box that can maybe shed a bit of light on what's going on there. But it's not as straightforward as you might imagine. I myself didn't really know any of this until a couple of years ago. I just thought Cameroon's Cameroon and end of story. But no, the Cameroon's got a few more, shall we say, the nation of Cameroon, the country of Cameroon, is a bit more complex than you might think. But anyway, so it's what's good is a lot of these statements, I say, they give you the French and the English, and because they're the chairs of the African group, they go into quite a lot of detail. So there's quite a lot of interesting aspects. And as I say, this was delivered on the 8th of March. And before, right at the start, okay, this is the special representative of the Secretary General. And of course, that's an important acronym to know here when we're interpreting into English. We can just call them the SRSG. That's very much accepted an accepted acronym. Certainly at the UN, and SRSG. You can that's you can just call it the Special Representative of the Secretary General. You can use that acronym. Now, another acronym that I should perhaps just point out here before we go any further. So as I say, he's the SRSG on the children and armed conflict. Now, this is particularly pertinent for you guys who interpret from English into French, let's say, or from English into whatever language it may be, simply because you will sometimes hear the issue of children and armed conflict simply being called CAC. Yes, that sort of, yeah, CAC, exactly. Strange acronym to sort of use. It's a strange acronym that you wouldn't it's legitimate. It's a legitimate acronym, and and I've heard reporters use it, and it can be a bit disconcerting. It can really throw you off, I think, if you're interpreting into French and you hear that. So just be prepared. If you hear CAC, that is children and armed conflict. All right. So, what were the sort of highlights then here then in this text that I've noted? Okay, starting off very simply. Okay, j'ai l'honneur d'intervenir. Okay, you don't intervene. We don't intervene really in English. Oh, you can, but just play it straight. Just speak. I have the honor to speak on behalf of. Sometimes I say I have the honor to deliver this statement on the behalf of, but you can just say it's my honor to speak on behalf of Le Groupe des États Africains. You can just call them the African group. You don't have to say the group of African states. The African group is just fine. So here again, I've given you the acronym there for the SRSG. Pour la qualité de son rapport. Now this is something I mention quite regularly. It's always good to remind you. So in English, it's always nice to throw in. So often, as I say in English, often we look to cut. But there are certain occasions when we have to throw in a word, and I think this is one of them. La qualité. So I always put in for the high quality of his report. I always think that if you just say for the quality of his report, it always reminds me of what football pundits say on Match of the Day, let's say. He's a quality player. He's a quality goalkeeper. This doesn't sound quite right to me, so I think it's always nice to add in the high when you're going to English. Another synonym, by the way, for quality is caliber, for the high caliber of his report, if you really want to jazz things up. Now, that report, qui aborde une question prioritaire. It's always good to have a few solutions for aborde. So here I've given you tackles. That's a very good one. Another one we use perhaps is which broaches. We often broach something in English, but so whatever. Addresses as being the sort of standard, sort of stock one, if you like. Bit boring, so you always want a few extra ones. Entre autres, I've put this often with entre autres, we'll do this Latin formulation inter alia. You can say among others, but it's nice also to say it might impress the listener to hear inter alia. I always think a bit of Latin impresses the listener. Une question prioritaire. So I've just put circular brackets around the question because really it's a bit redundant. Which addresses a priority on the agenda of the African states. I mean, you can say a priority issue if you want, but it's not absolutely necessary. À savoir, again, this is a sort of set phrase. You just want to say here. I tend to go with namely. Okay, then moving on to the next paragraph here. Une question préoccupante. So here I've given you a matter of concern. You could also say a troubling issue, for example. But I think in English that sounds quite nice, a matter of concern. And then here I've put round brackets, circular brackets around the vison, because often that vison is redundant. It sort of means with the aim of, with a view to. But in English, for example, as in this construction, despite the many initiatives to protect children in and during and after conflict. Often, like if you're going at speed, you can just that to by itself it reflects that idea of with a view to. So you can do it either way. You can say despite the money initiatives to protect children, or if you want to actually reflect the vision aimed at protecting children. For example, à cet égard, another sort of stock phrase here. Therefore just means therefore. You don't have to say with that in that regard. You can just say therefore. Le groupe se félicite du lancement officiel. So the Cameroonians are about to se félicite a couple of times. So again, it's another word where you perhaps want a few alternatives. I think again the sort of standard ones are maybe to commend or welcome. So in this instance, I've given you to hail. All hail the official launch. So that's a good one to have. I think these words sometimes go in. They become trendy for a while. So I remember one of my colleagues was once sort of complaining that a few years ago, se féliciter. Everyone, all the interpreters, they were doing it as hailing. Everyone is hailing left, right, and centre for some. It just caught on like wildfire. But anyway, it's nevertheless. It's it's a good word. It's something different, from the usual run-of-the-mill welcomes and commends. So here we've got, I said, to hail the official launch by the Secretary General, and I've just put brackets around the Nations Unies because we know it's. Oh, we know he's the Secretary General of the United Nations. The context is all there. So if you're again under pressure, you can just drop it. You can just say the official launch by the SG in February. Okay. Le 12 février dernier. Remember, sometimes this can be a bit confusing in French because this was delivered in March. Okay, what was the date of this? This was March the 8th. But le 12 février dernier is just that 12th February that has just been. In English, when we say last February, we say now, often we can sort of mean the previous year. So it's important not to let that confuse you. Usually, when the French put in that dernier, they mean of the same year. It's just the last one that went by. And again, if you're in a real hurry, you could drop the 12th as well. You just say in February. That's always a legitimate approach if you're, as I say, you're running behind. And then he talks about this guide pratique, some sort of practical guide that's going to be mentioned later on. Now here we have again se félicite également. So I've given you another alternative here. To applaud, all right, to add to your to add to the hailing. There's something I didn't note here, but maybe it's worth just saying. Partenariat solide. I don't know. See, in English, I don't like using the word solid. It doesn't sound quite right. I think it probably does in French, I guess. But to me, in English, sounds a bit wrong, bit wong, not wrong, but a bit wonky. Maybe you could say here, when you hear solide, a robust partnership. They do like talking about things being robust a lot at the UN. Maybe that sounds just a bit more catchy to me than a solid partnership. And then here, okay, a pu instaurer avec l'Union africaine. So a pu, again, this is a bit redundant. That I guess if you really wanted to reflect it, that the office managed to forge with the African Union or was able to. But again, do you really need it? I mean, so I've given you here, I say for instaurer. So I've given you the word forge here. So I like with partnerships and cooperation. I like forging cooperation, forging partnership. I think it's a good word. So I think I don't think you need the APU. I don't think you need to go to the length of saying that the SRSG managed to forge with the African Union. You can just say that they forged with them. And I've given you here just the acronym, the AU. Again, it's a pretty well-known, very well-known institution. And just as with the European Union, you can usually just go straight in with the EU. I think the African Union also, you can safely say the AU. Now here I would put in a full stop because this is quite a long sentence. In fact, it's one paragraph. But ayons donné, that ayons sort of suggest that maybe here you can just stop that sentence and start a new one. That's often, a good tactic to use when you've got speakers who like to speak in lengthy sentences. You've got to look for those little indicators where you can stop, where you can put a full stop in, and it just makes life easier for you. And then you can say, ayant donné lieu, so this led to, so they forged with the AU, this led to positive interaction. Se manifestant par, as reflected by, I've given you here for se manifester. And then in this expression here, ayant trait à la question des droits des hommes. Again, this is quite flowery language. The African speakers, the African delegations do like to throw in a lot of these flowers. I'm sure you know that by now if you've been watching my videos. Again, don't feel you have to mimic them, just keep it straightforward, just with regards to the rights of children and armed conflict, with respect to, with regards to whatever. Again here, le groupe des États africains. By this time, we know that they're talking about the African group. I mean, look, in the previous paragraph, he said le groupe des États africains. You really don't need to repeat the whole thing here. You don't even have to say the African group. By this point, you can just say the group. S'accorde, agrees that. Sometimes you can use concur. If you're sick of always using agree, sometimes you can use the word concur. So the group concurs that children anciennement enrôlés, so formally enrolled, maybe previously enrolled, but I think formally sounds nicer in English. Again here, à ce titre, like you had here. Here again, rather, after victime. You know that what you've just said sounds like a full sentence. The group agrees that children formally enrolled in armed conflict should be treated as victims. I mean, even as you say it, that sounds like a full English sentence. So take the opportunity. You hear the "et," just end the sentence and start with a new sentence. Therefore, à ce titre, the international community est appelé à redoubler. So urged is a very good word, I find, to use. I mean, you can say is called on to redouble its efforts, but I think in English it sounds nicer to say is urged to redouble its efforts. By the way, and redoubler, I think to redouble your efforts is, the cognate here is just fine to use. Ces enfants souvent perçus comme dangereux et immoraux. So I've given you a couple of options here. Often regarded as, or often deemed to be dangerous and immoral. So you could, I guess, say perceived, although I think, again, in French it sounds better than it does in English. So. Aussi, so this paragraph here, aussi is one of those words when they start a French sentence or French paragraph with aussi, usually you can just drop it, which is why I've put, let's say, the brackets here. Souscrit aux recommandations contenues. So again, you want a good collocation with recommendation. Endorses the recommendations, supports the recommendations. I guess you get aligns with the recommendations. Any one of those. Now, here's an interesting collocation here. Nourrit l'espoir, d'une interaction et une coopération plus substantielle. So with hope, the word hope. Now, I guess the straightforward way of doing it is just maybe you could say hopes for more substantial cooperation. But as I say, it's good to have a verb to collocate with hope. And I think the best one here is to cherish. We cherish the hope. That really sounds strong, we don't really nourish the hope, right? We cherish the hope in English. And another alternative is to entertain. We entertain hopes of a recovery or whatever. Cherish being I think the stronger of the two. So here I give you the 1, 2, 3, 4. Here, more substantial interaction and cooperation. In this little phrase, this une interaction et coopération. When you hear the une, that une is a kind of pointer that there's going to be some adjectives coming after the nouns. Okay, so you're hearing the d'une interaction et une coopération. So You could wait. Again, it depends how well you're going, how confident you're feeling. You can wait to hear the adjectives, the more substantial interaction or cooperation. Or if you're feeling a bit nervous on the trigger, you just say, hopes for, entertains hopes of interaction and cooperation that is more substantial with the special representative. I mean, it's one of these things we run into often, isn't it? When interpreting from French, as a rule, you want to try and hold back. It's always nicer to get the adjective first in English and then the noun. Um, then once you're hearing, the interaction and coopération, you're wondering how many nouns are going to come before we actually hear the adjectives. So sometimes you just have to take the leap and you just say that the nouns and then tag on the adjective at the end. So again, it's up to you how you're feeling at that moment in time. An accompagnement. So that's a favorite. The French seem to love to use this word in diplomatic speeches, or French speakers. So the semi-standard solution there is support, which I think is better than accompaniment. Okay. Ratification du protocole facultatif. It's always good to know this is a sort of stock phrase, the optional protocol. So there's loads of these optional protocols. You have all these UN conventions, and lots of them have protocols, which are optional. Implication d'enfants dans les conflits armés. Don't be tempted here by the cognate implication. That doesn't sound right in English. Implication, impliquer, involvement, involve. Okay. Then here, politique interdisant et réprimant l'enrôlement et l'utilisation. So these two are pretty more or less synonyms. So again, you want a couple of alternatives in English. I've given you here prohibit for interdire, outlaw for réprimant. You also have to ban, but I think these two are actually perhaps stronger. Although having said that, I mean, yeah, you have the nuclear test ban treaty. I mean, it's a good set of three either way to have. Prohibit, outlaw, ban. Okay, so just try and remember those three. Moving on to this one again. You've got the 1, 2, 3 here. These are basically conflict and post-conflict situations. Maybe if you're hearing it, you might have to say, conflict situations, and then you think you've got it, situation de conflit, and then he throws in et d'après conflit. And you've already said the conflict situations, but then you can just say and post-conflict situations. Sometimes you have to repeat a word, if you have, sometimes you just have to in English to make sure that your listener properly understands what you're talking about. Technique suffisant pour enquêter sur les violations graves. Okay, so to investigate grave human rights violations, grave violations of children's rights. It's always a good word, enquêter tends to be to investigate. Et pour suivre les auteurs. So, these two notions will often go together. The investigation on the one hand, and then pursuing or prosecuting les auteurs, the perpetrators. All those words all come in a bit of a package, don't they? Perpetration of crimes, crimes committed, etc. Hold accountable the perpetrators. Remember, as I say, all those sort of words in a package. Okay, la réintégration durable. So here it's like, I think the best solution here is long-term reintegration. Maybe sustainable integration. Although durable, sustainable, that all tends to work better with issues like development. I think when it comes to reintegration of children, maybe the lasting reintegration of children. I mean, lasting is one I tend to use that with peace, lasting peace, lasting solution. So yeah, I like here a long-term reintegration. I mean, any of those three could fit. I'm just saying that I think the nicest one in English is probably the long-term reintegration in this particular case. Qui demeure essentiel pour garantir une paix pérenne. Okay, so I've just simplified this rather than saying which remains essential for guaranteeing, I will often say is key to. It's very simple. It's just 3 little syllables, as opposed to the French 6. Okay, de manière essentielle pour 6. So it's is key to is a good phrase in English. Une sécurité pérenne. Again, this is similar to durable here, right? So I think lasting security, as I was saying, lasting peace, lasting security. Again, obviously in English you have this word perennial. Doesn't sound good though. I think we want lasting security here. Pour enrayer la spirale de la violence, I've given you here to halt. Again, something different, always saying just to stop, for example, to halt. Maybe you could also check the spiral of violence is another one you could have. But anyway, I like halt in this particular case. Again, a long package of words here, a lot of adjectives. Again, that you have to you have to just remember that soutien. You have to remember that word support, because you got the political, technical, and financial. In fact, I tell a lie. Look, so in English, the first adjective we'd go for here, of course, is the viable, so reliable political, technical, and financial support. Now, let's say you've decided, okay, I'm going to just keep that support till the end, and you've probably just gone in with political, technical, financial, and you're just waiting to say the support, and then that viable gets thrown in, which in English would come in usually as the first adjective. You would say reliable, political, technical, and financial support. Okay, so what do you do if you hear it like that? I would probably just say the political, technical, and financial support, reliable support, which must be provided. This technique of just of repeating, giving like added emphasis. You don't want to correct. It's better to give added emphasis than sort of making it sound like you're correcting yourself. You see, if you're correcting yourself, sometimes the listener will question. It might raise doubts with the listener as to your competence. Whereas if you put this emphasis in, it doesn't sound like you're correcting yourself. It just sounds that you're just giving it added punch to the expression. And then the final bit, okay, la sensibilisation à l'utilisation, it's a classic word in diplo speak, outreach, okay, sensibilisation. You got other words like advocacy, although advocacy I tend to stick when you have plaidoyer in the French, I tend to go with advocacy. But sensibilisation, I usually go with outreach. Awareness raising is another one, although takes a bit longer to say. So there you have it. There you go. As I say, a lot of interesting stuff there from Cameroon. So to finish with, I'm just going to run through this quick site translation. So I'm going to go as if, the Cameroons, I've noticed they speak quite fast usually when they deliver these statements. So I'm going to also I'm going to try and find the original, hopefully, the original recording, so that you can then try and give it a shot yourself at interpreting it. But yeah, as a rule, they'll always give the statement, but they will read it off very quickly. So if you don't have it in front of you, the statement, then you've really got to use, all the tricks in the book to keep up with the speaker. Not to mention the fact that I think often the Cameroonians, the quality of the recording of the quality of the sound will be pretty poor. So, okay, here we go. President, I'm honoured to speak on behalf of the African Group. The group thanks the SRSG for the high quality of his report, which tackles a priority in the agenda of African states. That is the prevention of grave violations of the rights of children and bolstering protection of children affected by armed conflict. It's a matter of concern for African countries, given the figures regarding grave violations of children's rights during conflicts, which continue to rise, despite the many initiatives to protect children during and after conflict. The African Group also applauds the robust partnership that the Office of the SRSG has forged with the AU. This led to positive interaction as reflected by participation in 2020 in a number of activities organised by the AU regarding the issue of rights of children and armed conflict. The group concurs that children formerly enrolled in armed conflict should be treated primarily as victims. Therefore, the international community is urged to step up its efforts to find a constructive role in society for these children who are often regarded as dangerous and immoral. The group, which endorses the recommendations contained in the report, cherishes the hope for more substantial interaction, cooperation with the SRSG and support, particularly when it comes to ratifying the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on involvement of children in armed conflict, adoption of at national level of laws and policies prohibiting and outlawing enrollment and use of children by armed groups and armed forces, the need to step up support to national judiciaries in conflict and post-conflict situations, ensuring that those authorities have the sufficient resources and technical capacities to investigate grave violations of children's rights and to pursue the perpetrators. The long-term reintegration of children, which is key to guaranteeing lasting peace and security and for halting the spiral of violence. Reliable political, technical and financial support, which must be provided to reintegration efforts. And finally, the need for outreach on use of the practical guide for mediators for protecting children in situations of armed conflict. So there you have it. I maybe made a couple of mistakes doing this, maybe left a couple of words out. As I say, I was just focusing on going really fast and trying to keep things as succinct as possible. Okay, well, if you've enjoyed this episode, if you've learned some new things, please remember to press the like button. Also, please do subscribe. As always, that's my only fee in this. Subscribe, share it with your friends if you'd be so kind. Much appreciated. And leave comments leave comments down below the video, please, if there's any other suggestions, vocabulary suggestions that you think could be handy, or if there's anything heaven forbid, that you disagree with me on, put it in the comments. I love getting feedback either way. And really, that's about it for today. Keep following me in the LinkedIn group, as I say. We'll have lots more of all these videos coming up in all these languages, French, Spanish, Russian, Arabic, whatever takes your fancy. All that's left for me to do is to close the episode. Oh God, I'm going to be in trouble. Yes, anyway, so that means that episode 79 of the Interpretation Station stands adjourned.